What is up, Facebook land? Welcome to another episode of the Two Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. Before I introduce my girl, Teresa Snider, I want to first dedicate the show. And as always, as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking about what I'm going to dedicate the show to. I had Aaron Scotty on Saturday, who is the executive producer of the Peanut Butter Falcon. I dedicated that show to anyone who has Down syndrome or anyone who has someone in their family or friend that has Down syndrome. Today, I'm just going to dedicate the show to people that have either a learning or a physical disability. Everybody knows that I work with people through Max Out with neurological, neuromuscular disease or injury. Some people that have cerebral palsy, strokes, TBIs, ALS, MS. So I have a sweet spot in my heart for that, as well as obviously my brother having had autism and a severe stutter is literally my life, is just helping people with disabilities. And we'll find out from Teresa that she's also raising money for a nonprofit as well. So it just makes sense that we talk about that today and that we dedicate the show to anyone who's living with a learning disability or a physical disability. Just always remember that no matter where you're at in life, no matter what's going on in your life, there's always a positive to take from it. And if you work hard and you strive for excellence in whatever it is you're doing, you're going to achieve it. So that's my dedication for this show. The podcast, where can you hear it? iTunes, Stitcher, Applecast, Anchor, wherever, like 13 different places you can hear the podcast. So that's that. That's the audio. Now, Teresa, she's been booked on the show on the calendar for a while. She is a speaker. She's an influencer. She's a media host. She does lives and all different things. She's fitness, you name it. She's got something going on with something. And she's also a finalist for a speaker competition called the Next Impactor, which is really helping a lot of people learn how to brand themselves and become a professional speaker and learning from some really great speakers in the business. So without further ado, my friend Teresa Snider, how are you, dear?
Oh, drum roll, please. Literally, I've had this on my calendar for several months and I'm so excited. Thank you, Matt. Really. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for the dedication to the people that are, have some sort of disability. And sometimes it's things that we don't physically see. And I love that you added in that component. I love it.
Well, you've seen the show. You know, I asked one question. Everybody gets the same question. So I'm going to lead it off, and we're just going to dive right into it and see where the show takes us. Who is Teresa Snider?
I am the Next Impactor.
There it is. Bam.
Boom. Yes.
Can't beat that.
No, there it is. I am the Next Impactor. My name is Teresa Snider, and I grew up in small Texas, America. So born and bred, small town girl. And whenever I was out on the cotton farms in the heat of the day, early in the morning, late at night, I said, I am going to college. So that was my motivation for me to go to college. And from there, I went into college, and my master's degree, as I told you, exercise and sports science, kinesiology. So when you were talking about your product that you have, I was like, I love it. What? No. I just was like, I'm so intrigued by that and how the body works and how the mind works and on and on and on. And for the past 2 years, I've been really literally taking on the endeavor of being an entrepreneur and what that looks like. And some days are pretty and some days are just lonely as crap. So that's who Teresa Snider is in a nutshell. And you can ask me anything based on.
Well, first of all, I'm going to ask one question. Are you a Houston Texans fan or a Dallas Cowboys fan?
Well, it's interesting because I would have been a Dallas Cowboys fan growing up, always old school, Dallas Cowboys fan. And now I would say, yes, I root for the Cowboys. Denver also, interestingly enough.
Where'd that come from?
I live in Amarillo, so I'm really far up north in the Panhandle. So Denver, I'm really as close to Denver as I am Dallas. And so the Broncos, for whatever reason.
Well, you may not know this, but at some one point in time in my life, I was Tim Tebow's bodyguard when he was playing for the Broncos. So I have a soft spot for the Broncos as well. My best friend in the world, my right arm, Toby, is a Colorado boy, and I got to take him to a Broncos game and sideline passes and Tebow's family suite and back to Tim's house after the game. So it was like he was like my Make-A-Wish kid. That's why I told him that was his Make-A-Wish day. So it was pretty cool.
So cool. And I did not know that part. So I certainly didn't throw it in for that reason, but that is cool.
Yeah, I've had some really good moments in my life. And when I'm all done living, my resume is going to be, it may not have made me a goddamn cent, but my resume is going to look like I lived the most epic life on the planet. So at the end of the day, that's what life's about, man, experiencing everything you can possibly experience in it.
Yes. And do you find, though, that people, for whatever reason, they don't want to take on having an epic life because of fear or what people are going to think?
I think people are just afraid of their own. Most people don't want to fail. Mm-hmm. And I never look at, somebody had said to me, failure is a great word. And I say, I don't ever use the word failure ever in my life. I missteps, shortcomings, didn't win, whatever the other term is. Mm-hmm. Failure is something that like a dad or a mom says to a kid when they hate them and they say, you're a failure. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's just a word that I took out of my language a long time ago. But I think to answer your question, I think people are afraid that if they put everything into it and fall short, that they're going to be either embarrassed or they're not going to be, someone's going to be disappointed or one of those feelings of not worthy that comes from that. And I know with what you're doing with the mastermind stuff you're doing and what I do when I help kids through mentoring is I teach them to figure out who they are, what their strengths and weaknesses are. Because if you don't know what you suck at, you don't know where to spend most of your time, right? And I tell, and I don't know what your thoughts are, and I'd love to hear it. I have a rule of thumb that if you suck at something, it's either because you naturally just aren't talented at it, mm-hmm. you have zero interest in it, so therefore you put no effort into it.
Yes.
Or you're too afraid to try. And I would say 95% are one of the first two. Either you are innately not able to do it or you have no passion for it, which is why you're not trying. And my theory in life is if you suck at something, if you work really, really hard at the thing you suck at, you're just going to get marginally less sucky. And that's just not good enough.
Right.
If you're going to spend time, tomorrow's not promised. If you're going to spend time in the areas where you're good to be great. If you're great to be amazing. And that's just when I mentor kids, my own life, I don't do the things I suck at because I suck at them for a reason.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? That's such a great philosophy. And I think that's part of it. And a lot of times whenever I, again, am mentoring people, and I really, really have this passion for mentoring the youth. I spent time last year teaching at a middle school and on and on and on. It's that there's something to be said about that. Like I, honest to God, can do things in front of the camera so much easier and faster than I can in the editing room. And so it's kind of finding out, well, who do I know that's someone, who do I know that can edit that loves it? You know what I mean? And so some of the things that I just am not good at or don't want to do, they're not going to get me up out of bed every day if I'm not passionate about it. And believe me, coming from a sales background, and there were times where I was being instructed, told to sell things that I did not believe in. And that is the worst feeling, at least for me, in the world, because there's no passion for me to sell something that I do not believe in.
And I think that says a lot about your personality. My background's in human behavior and understanding what makes people tick. And one of the telltale signs of a good human being, and not saying that the people that aren't this are bad, but it's a telltale sign that you are a good person, is when you can't fake your way through something just because the financial upside's there. I've been asked to do a bazillion different things over the last 10 years that probably could have made me a lot of money. But at the end of the day, money doesn't wake me up. It just doesn't. And then some people it does. It's not the thing that drives me. It's the value I have in other people's lives and what I do with my time as far as helping others. If that happens to have a paycheck at the end, that's fantastic. But it's not why I do what I do. And I think in a sales role, if you are there's some people that are just built to sell, and it doesn't matter if they're selling wrenches, widgets, or doodads.
Right.
they're going to sell. I mean, they don't have to love it or believe it. They believe in the process of selling. And then there's people that are passion driven. And it sounds like you're more of a passion driven person.
Oh, very much so. Very much. Very much of the passion driven. I like to think of literally, it's relationship oriented to me. It's not how many sales can you get for the day. And so that's why people, I think, sure, anybody, I guess, could be good at sales, but whenever I'm a passion driven person and truly have the best interest of heart for the people that I'm selling to or building a relationship with or bringing into a mastermind. And so you heard me before we came onto the show talk about what has been interesting about this next Impactor component is getting people that I know to back me up. I have all these friends that say they love helping people. I love helping people. Oh my gosh, helping people is my favorite thing to do. And I'm like, I am raising money for disabled veteran civilians, anyone that, is the face of a disability. And they're like, I don't know, I have an event coming up and, I've got to pay money for the room. So I really don't have time to help you. So then I'm now conflicted, shocked. I'm shocked by the people that have always like, I love to help people. Yes, I've got your back, girl. Whatever you need, you call me. And then they don't pick up the phone. So I know I went a little bit down a rabbit hole, but you said the psyche of the mind. I'm curious, what is it in the realm of, if you had 10 people, what percent, because I'm not driven by money per se either. Yes, I have bills to pay. Yet I could go, and I heard a speaker say this one time, I can go to a strip club if money's all I want. If truly, right? Like I can go sell some cocaine or whatever random weird, if that's all, which thank God I didn't go down that path. I mean, I have my own 12-step recovery from alcohol and all that. That's another thing. But what about these people that say they want to help people, but then they don't show up? I'm curious.
Well, I think there is people's attention span and their emotional connection span is very limited to the moment in which they said something. How many people have you heard say, oh, if you ever need me, call me. I'm so sorry to hear what happened to you. If you need anything, give me a call. And you don't call then when that moment was they were feeling that level of connectivity and wanting to help. And you call 6 months later when they're in the middle of doing whatever they're doing, but you're at a moment where now you need their help and it's not convenient and their energy and their emotional energy is not as invested into when they actually made that offer. And that's, I think, more so than not what drives people to help. And there are people that are just naturally responsive, right? You have people that they're just wired to help. And I'll give you an example. And we talked about it a little bit beforehand. When my wife had her hip replacement a year and a half ago, 6 weeks afterwards, she fell down a flight of stairs and broke her femur and had to get another hip replacement in the same hip and a rod placed into her femur and a cage wrapped around it and a massive surgery. And I didn't ask for help. I just said, I'm in a spot. I don't know what to do. Like for the first time in a long time, I was overwhelmed by all the responsibilities that were now on top of me that I didn't know how to handle. Because some of them were things that I just had no talent or ability to do. Things my wife did, like, getting my kids prepared for school and making lunches and cooking dinners and cleaning the house and all these things that were sort of thrust upon me. And a friend of mine from high school, who I hadn't talked to a lot, she saw my post and she organized a meal, some website where people can sign up to bring meals. And I can't tell you how much that meant to me.
I know.
Just for the simple fact that it was one thing I didn't have to worry about. And I didn't really ask for it. And somebody just stepped up and said, I'm going to take charge of this and rally the troops to get you meals prepared. So it's stuff like that. Now, I'm sure she's like that in every way possible, because that's just how she is. And some people made a meal. I don't know if that same person that made a meal would have organized the entire event, but for that moment, they were good to make a meal.
Sure.
So I think it's all based on the emotional connection at that moment when people make those broad statements of, if you need me, call me.
Right. Well, and I'm curious, have you ever read the book, The 5 Love Languages?
I'm going to give you a little bit of story about me. I've read, up until I wrote a book, I read one book, and that was Animal Farm in 9th grade. And then I read a bunch of like mystery novels, police books in order to get myself. But I haven't read a book in, well, I lie. The best book I ever read, and I'm going to say this now, he was a guest on the show, Danny Bader. And if you ever want to talk to a guy that is just an amazing human being, an amazing speaker, business coach, he's just brilliant. But he also died after being electrocuted and came back, met God and came back.
Oh, and, okay. I was about to write it down, and then I was like, whoa, maybe I'm not. And then now I'm like, okay.
Yep. Amazing. And he wrote 3 books. And the latest book he wrote is called I Met Jesus for a Miller Lite. And it's a fiction book. And it's just an amazing way he used the storyline to just bring you into the story. Amazing. So, but to answer your question, I've heard of that book, but I never read it.
Okay. Well, and the short version is they would be fun because there's just this little quiz. I tell people that are married, and I'm not married, so I'm not saying that I am a marriage counselor by any stretch of the imagination, but we're motivated by 5 different love languages. My love language is words of affirmation. Like, I love people just, hey girl, I got your back. Acts of service. If somebody puts gas in my car or tells me they're going to help around my house, I'm like, I feel loved. And then it's quality time, affection, and gifts. And that whole quality time, I dated a guy, his was quality time. And he's like, we're going to spend time together. We're going to read the paper and just sit here together. And I'm like, oh, like, what? No, I've got stuff to do. What do you mean quality time? So anyway, the 5 love languages is interesting because you said that about the meal prep, and they're, again, back to the passions. What is it that you're passionate about? What can I ask of you that might be your strength, or some way that you feel appreciated or wanted or needed, different than I could do that of somebody else. The same thing as like, how do you drive or motivate people in sports, or how do you motivate people at work, and on and on and on. So
yeah, the human mind is amazing. Just being able to understand, especially when you know, for me, it's first 5 minutes I speak to somebody, I kind of figure out who they are and what their motivators are, what their personality profile is going to be, where they probably have strengths and weaknesses, just based off of some simple contextual information I get. And it's the 5 love languages. There's, you know, you have the DISC profiles where you have, you know, so there's so many different ways to determine how somebody wants to be spoken to and how somebody likes to speak to another person. And it's just amazing how, and I use a version of DISC from a company called Intermetrics. With a lot of my kids that I mentor, we go through this process of self-discovery, and they write down all the things that are true about themselves. And then we have a DISC profile and a values index test, which then it prints out in science detail. Everything they just discovered about themselves is validated now through science. And it's pretty cool for them to see that they were able to uncover that about themselves without having to be told what it was from a test, but to invert that and have the test be the validator of the work that they did on themselves.
Ooh, that is good stuff. Like, I love that kind of stuff because, again, even studies that I've done, and same thing, me studying people around this latest women's lib movement, per se, is why we're all trapped and caught up in this and on and on. And it's like, you know, people judge us in the first 3 to 4 seconds when they see us. Like, it's a visual, and that comes back way back in time from survival. You know, is that person safe? Can they be trusted? Are they going to attack? All of that. So we just have to get over the fact that we are going to be judged in the first, used to be like 9 seconds. Our society now, boom.
Well, when I was a kid, and I'm sure you remember, to get any news information from the West Coast or the East Coast, you had to wait till the next day to get that. And now it's literally, I know what pitch was thrown in the second inning to the third batter, and was it 97 miles an hour and 89 mile an hour changeup, and I know that instantaneously.
Yes.
And that just goes to the point that you're saying it was 9, now 4, is that instantaneous need for data and information that we need to consume now is what our society is created for. It's a good thing and a bad thing.
Exactly. Well, and and you mentioned your age, and I'm 48, so I graduated from high school in 1989 and on and on. So
Class 89.
I know, right? It's like, whoop, whoop, 30 years, 30
Hold
years
on, before you say anything else, what was do you remember your school song? Not your school song, but your graduating class theme song. Did you do that in Texas?
Friends are friends forever. And the We Are the World.
Ours was Make It Last Forever by Keith Sweat. That was our prom song and our theme song for our graduation.
That's great.
Keith Sweat.
You know what? On a cassette tape.
Yeah. And there was probably some 8-track involved in that too.
Exactly. So when I went to college, like we literally barely had a computer lab. Barely. And I wrote my thesis on a typewriter, and I don't even know where it is. It was that word processor one, and I had the whiteout ink, and you'd go to the computer lab, but then you had to have the pass to get it to print with the perforated paper. So I bring all that up. When I was in high school, we went to watch film on Saturday from the game that was played, Thursday night. But it was the film. So yes, we're a different society. So I'm curious for you in mentoring the youth, all this stuff that I've read, so much stress and anxiety, and these kids are comparing themselves on Instagram, and oh my gosh, I'm curious, what is your experience? Because I'm thinking they don't have it so bad. I wonder why they feel like they have it so bad.
Well, it used to be, if you didn't like somebody, it was whispered down the lane that you didn't like somebody, or you did like somebody, and you had to pass the note, and it was, do you want to be my boyfriend? Circle yes or no. Like,
yes or no.
Right. So it was so much different in how the information was given.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can go online and you can create a post that destroys another person's character, and it can be seen by millions of people if that's the way it's set up. And that volume of feeling of my life is ruined, because they know that if I hand you a note, you may show it to 3 or 4 other people, but in my mind, I think you kept it to yourself. Mm-hmm. Somebody puts something on social media, it is literally the whole world has access to it. And it's that overwhelming feeling of everybody now knows, or everybody hates me. And I think that's having, I have a 16-year-old and a 21-year-old. So I lived through that with the 21-year-old, and I'm living through it with the 16-year-old. The meanness of kids today, and how petty and fickle kids are in their friendships. And just before we came on, one of my best friends all my life just texted me. That's literally my life. I have my friends from when I was 10, 12 years old that are still my friends today, my boys today. So the kids don't have that anymore. My daughter has her 3 friends from high school. And even those that, they're all going in their own direction now, and they have their own lives. Doesn't mean that they're not still friends. It's just, it's not as close knit as it once was. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think relationships are as deeply fostered and on a personal level as they were maybe when we were growing up.
Well, and that brings a whole nother conversation around what it's like for me to be dating in this day and age compared to what it was like in, 1992. And again, the lines are blurred, and we as a society, in a roundabout way, have kind of caused it. Yes, I do love the fact that women, we do have potentially more opportunity. It's just, we still have to know our place, is my opinion. I still would love it when a man would open the door for me, or, call me 2 days later, or tell me when he's thinking about me, or all those things that I remember growing up with or being taught. I'll never forget this. You'll appreciate this. I was in high school in the 80s, big hair. Mine was pretty big, but big hair, But a guy drove up big Texas hair. The guy drove up in the driveway, honked the horn, and my dad said, "Absolutely not. No way. That kid will come up to the door, knock on the door, and shake my hand." And, and today, it's like they send you a Tinder message. "Hey, baby." I'm like, what? And it's just so interesting. And it's the same thing. People, like you said, they can say so much so quickly. You know, and I mentioned to you, some guy sends me this long message. Hey, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I'm from Texas, and I'm really wanting to date some pretty girl like you. Da, da, da. You know, and it was so horribly misspelled. The grammar was all over the place. And I would bet you a whole lot of money he's not even American. And I'm not discriminating. I'm just being, this is what's so. So.
I think, first of all, I would probably just focus on like work and never date if I had to date. I mean, luckily I haven't had to worry about that since I was 23 years old. But that in and of itself would drive me completely batshit crazy. Mm-hmm. But you're right. And just to go back to the women's, what you said about knowing your place or whatever, my theory is this: there's nothing. I think today there's probably some confusion level on men's part based on all the stuff that's out in the media and the feminism and everything that's happening, where guys don't necessarily know what's up or what's down or what's right or what's wrong, or should I or shouldn't I? Should I grab her hand or not grab her hand? Should I kiss her on the cheeks or on the lips? Like, all those things would be completely mind-numbing to me if I had to navigate that nonsense. And I think what you're probably doing, which is probably going to help a lot as far as the clarity side for men, sharing that, like when you're on a date, say, listen, this is the kind of person I am. I truly do love it when a guy opens my door. I love it when a guy texts me a couple days later or gives me a call or tells me he's thinking of me. Like, those are the things that make me feel happy. And I don't think anybody does that anymore. I don't think people are willing to have those very forward, I always call it the elephant in the room talk. I literally die for elephant in the room talk. I love the elephant in the room talk.
Me too. Let's get it,
let's get it out. Because you know what? The last thing I want to do is in 5 years have you throw back in my face that on our third date, I didn't do this. And that's, you've held on to that for five. Like, I don't need that in my life. Like, I just want to know now. If it sucks, let's just find out it sucks today and move on. Or if I hurt you in some way, or if I didn't do something that you were expecting, please tell me, because I'm not the brightest dude on the planet. And I don't pick up on every cue that you give me. So just tell me.
Exactly. Well, and again, same thing. It's so interesting. There's a YouTube video with the man that he's speaking on stage, and he talks about how a man is wired. And then he says how a woman is wired. He's talking about a man, simple, one thing. We're going to talk about sports. Put that back in the folder. A woman, we got 22 things that we're thinking of at once. And, it's so interesting. And I love how you said that. Just put it out there. Be straight with people. Tell them what it is that you're thinking or not thinking. Because I think we make things up and we do these prejudged notions, or we make it up. What we think they're thinking. And until we ask them or have a conversation about it, the lines get blurred and people get confused and feelings get hurt and people don't call. And it's like, that's why I think women sort of knowing their place. And I know that, believe me, I get hate mail. Teresa, you should wear eyelashes. You shouldn't. You should talk about feminine energy. You should not talk about whatever. I'm just saying that this is it. Yes. Am I glad to have some level of equal rights? Do I want to be more valuable than a horse? Sure. Makes sense. But I've also think we've come to a time where feminine energy is beautiful and we've lost it. And I love how you said that, how a woman can tell somebody, acknowledging a man, thank you so much for thinking about me, or thank you so much. I love it when a guy opens the door for me, or thank you for, thinking of me today, sending me a note. So that kind of stuff's really, really cool.
It's, I just think human connectivity and communication skills are the thing that is the least, there's not as much onus on it. Like in my family, I raised my kids, we talk about everything, and I don't have, I have rules. Obviously I'm a pretty, I'm real easy on some things, but I'm pretty militant on some other things. But we have one rule in our house, and our house is that if you have a problem, let's talk about it. And sitting on it, sleeping on it, none of that helps. Talking about it helps, so that everybody's aware. If you're having a bad day and you give me crap, I know you weren't directing that at me. It was caused by something else. But until I know what that is, I just think you're directing it at me. So we need to talk about that. And I think those are the things that are missing in today's world, is that we don't. And I talked about this before the show. I'm not a joiner. I will communicate with everybody. I don't mind having conversations with people. I don't mind helping anybody. It doesn't mean I want to join your group or become part of your movement. It just means that I'm okay with investing the time of whatever moment that is to connect with you. I will do that. It just doesn't mean it has to go farther. And I don't think people are willing to even go that far in today's society. Nobody wants to have that conversation. I'll talk to a Democrat, a Republican, an atheist, a Bible banger, a Jew, a Muslim. It doesn't matter. I want to know and connect with you.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't mean that we're best friends. It just means that I'm connecting on a human level with you. And I want to know how your day is. I want to know what's going on your mind. And or if I'm on duty as a cop and I have somebody that's, pissed off in their house and they're breaking crap, I'm not there to arrest you. I just want to find out how to stop you from breaking crap.
Yes.
That's really my only goal, is to how do I end this problem, which is you smashing up your house. And that comes down to my desire to communicate and to listen to what someone else needs to say and process that.
Yes. And I really, truly believe that's one thing that really people want more than anything, is to be heard. And that requires communication. And for a lot of people, it requires, turn the TV off or sit down with me and have breakfast or whatever. And I'll use my brother as an example. So I was a senior, my brother was a freshman. It was only in the last couple of years that we've really remended and gotten close again. And I finally went to him and said, I cannot imagine having me for the older sister. I really can't. Because I was type A. I was going to be good at everything. I was going to go to college, and so I was a bratty older sister. And now that we've had that communication and we've talked about it, the elephant in the room, some people may not think that's a very big elephant in the room. Yet it is, because it repaired a relationship. And it's like, wow. Because for me, my family, we didn't necessarily talk about a lot of things, which meant we didn't fight or anything. I had a very normal, I guess, Norman Rockwell or whatever the Cleavers are. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I have a pretty normal upbringing. And then the wheels fell off for me 8 years ago, in a sense of they're going, what is going on? And it was when I was turning 40. So when I was turning 40, I had married my corporate career. It had fallen apart. I was thinking I didn't have kids. Oh no. So that was what I was faced with at the time. And thank goodness I've now been in communication with people and mended relationships and found a way that I can now be of service and help and be in a different place.
Well, you had mentioned earlier, and it probably was for another conversation, but we're in the middle of this one now, so I'm going to bring it up. Your 12-step recovery program with alcohol. Was that during that time you were just talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Might as well. If you're cool with it.
Sure. Well, and it's interesting at the times that I think I talk about it whenever I think it's going to be, when I'm going to be a contribution. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Who wants to bring out the skeletons in the closet? Not very many people. Look at America. We have gated communities. We drive nice cars, but we lock them, shut them, and leave everybody out and don't want anybody to see the real stuff. So yes, so in the summer of 2011, I was turning 40, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, I lost my corporate career because of downsizing and the market had shifted. I thought life was over. And it definitely led me into escaping my emotional feelings through the use of alcohol. And people are like, you? And I'm like, I wasn't a problem drinker before that necessarily, because I was a good student, blah, 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 blah. But it was just that particular year, that summer, whenever I was turning 40, I mean, I just like, I I've landed myself in a whole deal of depression. I didn't feel like I had a whole lot of hope, and that's what I can say. And there was at one particular point that summer that I was supposed to go to receive an award. I was supposed to fly to Indianapolis, Indiana, to receive an award for being an outstanding advisor for college students. And I couldn't go because I didn't feel like I really deserved it or felt worthy of it. And that's when I really was present to, I've got to get some help.
And who did you call first for that? I'm just curious because I know I've got several friends that have gone through that process, and that first phone call is usually the one that creates the glimmer of hope, that little crack of hope in your life.
Yes. And I can tell you that, and I get a little flushed, a little red talking about it. When I start turning red, it's like because you were a first responder. It was September 2011. The first responders had to break into my house because my family was worried I wasn't answering the phone. And it was because I purposely drank enough alcohol and sleeping pills that I did not want to. Didn't want to exist. And all I remember are the first responders trying to get me. I could just hear things in my house. I could hear the sirens. So they transported me, and my mom and my aunt came to get me, and I wouldn't let the doctors release my medical records because I didn't want my parents to know what my blood alcohol content was. Because, in the ER, they were doing what they do in the ER, as you know, and they're like, I can't believe, one, she didn't throw up or get sick or whatever, or die from that amount of alcohol poisoning. So that was my wake-up call. It was friends were aware, friends were concerned because I did not go on that trip to Indianapolis. And when I did not go, because I was so excited about winning that award, and there was just something inside me that was like, they're awarding me for being an outstanding mentor and advisor to college kids. And yet I was being so hard on myself. Look at my life. I didn't get married. I didn't do this. My job, blah, 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 the pity party. So yeah, that was the wake-up call.
So I guess my next segue to that is, when did you have your epiphany of, like, I know when I had my change, I went through a 13-year period of depression after my brother died. And I know exactly when the moment was that I realized that my life needed to be more and in a different, and that I had value, and that my purpose was redefined and all that. Was there a moment when, after you got through your 12-step program and you're in recovery and you started to figure things out, was there a specific moment that you remember that said, this is my shift?
December 22nd, 2011. I mean, we were approaching Christmas, and, I'd gone to a couple of meetings. I'd tried to hook up with some different friends. It wasn't that I wanted to stay in the depression. Like, when you're in that depression, man, you're weighted down. And of course I was adding alcohol on top of it, which was a depressant. My friends were not, I had some great friends, don't get me wrong. They're part of the reason why that helped me. Yeah, there are a few friends that misery loves company and all that. But that December 22nd, 2011, I was like, I got to get it together. I mean, I was wanting to pack alcohol to go home for Christmas. And you know what I mean? Just all kinds of stuff that we'll save it for another interview, but that's it, right? Like, that was the moment. And I'm curious, what was because everybody has that moment, spiritual awakening.
I call it a moment of God's grace. Mine was, and we've never talked about this, just so everybody knows, this literally the first time we've ever spoken was in this interview. And everybody that's watched the show knows the story. But anyways, when my brother died, my brother, like I told you, was autistic and stuttered. He was 3 years older than me, but I was the older brother. So my job was to protect him. And when he died, I felt like I failed that. And I felt that the only thing that I was good at was that. And I also was angry at God because I thought God took him from me and left me alone. And that if it was going to take anybody, I should have probably died more than my brother. because my brother, I didn't feel that he had a chance to really live his life, that there was so many, he was just on the cusp of starting to figure some things out. And, but what I didn't know is that, throughout that 13-year period that I was destroying myself, that my brother actually lived an amazing life. Because there was a summer, every summer for 4 years, my brother would go to this Christian camp and he worked there.
Oh, I remember this story from the Saturday. Oh my gosh.
So that's when I found out that my brother actually lived, because I found out after I wrote the book. Well, the moment of grace, God's grace, was 13 years after my brother died. I had my son, and I named him after my brother. And my grandmother, who I just had dinner with tonight, had held on to my brother's clothes for 13 years because she was watching him the week he died. And she turned him into a quilt that she gave to me as a gift when my son was born. And it was the first time I ever had anything tangible that was my brother. Mm-hmm. And that night I went down and I spent the entire night writing memories, vivid, clear, crystal clear memories of my brother. And it wound up with 26,000 words that night of memories, which then became the basis of the book that I wrote.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that again. Like, I'm just so touched by that.
Trust me, so was I. It was, it's one of those it's that moment where, like, I came up and I saw color. Mm-hmm. I went down at like 9 o'clock at night and I came up at like 7:30 in the morning. I had a basement office and I came up, and where the light would come in the kitchen was directly across from the door to the basement. And I saw, and it's not that I probably had seen it every morning, but I never noticed the color in the light of the coming through the window. And I just thought that was so brilliantly awesome. And I just felt this weight just sort of just fall off of me. And that was kind of the moment. And that's why I always ask, when people have been through a struggle or a trauma or addiction or anything like that, I always want to know whether or not there was a defining moment where they said, enough's enough. And I'm going to get my shit together and figure out how to live again. And so that's why I asked the question.
No, and thank you. It's a great question. And, my theme word for this particular year has been is grace. And I have it written, I painted it in my, it's behind me somewhere. And I have the word grace just because I believe God's grace. There's evidence for me. There's evidence daily of God's grace.
It's important. The thing that I've found, and maybe you as well, anybody who goes through trauma, and trauma, PTSD is real. PTSD is a thing, and I used to not think it was. I used to think it was you just were too much of a pussy and you just couldn't handle it. That's kind of my mentality used to be until I did my research and found out what PTSD actually was. And PTSD is simply your brain's was incapable of processing information that it received, and it gets caught in a loop. And that literally for 13 years, I knew I was broken. Like, I knew I was going through it. It wasn't this, everybody else is thinking I'm depressed and I think I'm fine. It was, I knew there was something wrong. So I just couldn't get out of it. I didn't know how to end the cycle. Right. And I think for anybody who's gone through a trauma or gone through anything like that, the minute you have that moment of grace, the minute that seminal shift happens, your acuity level to things around you is so much greater. Like, I see things now that were in front of me, I'm sure 100 times before, that I never noticed. I see it all now. And it's like I'm hypersensitive to everything, emotionally, physically, mentally, everything. I'm just hyper aware. And it's sometimes annoying as hell, but it allows me to see things for what they truly are and make decisions on things because I can see everything very clearly.
Yes. Well, my brother just shared with me yesterday. Tell me when we're coming up on the.
No, we got about 7 minutes, so we're good.
Okay, cool. Is that my brother just shared with me yesterday, yesterday, because I was driving home from church and I just happened to call him, and we go certain amounts of time. Yet, when I went to my 30-year class reunion, someone asked about my brother and told me a story about that. My brother, we grew up farming. My brother is the one that came up on a really bad wreck. And the man that was in the wreck there'd been a blowout and the man was not wearing a seatbelt and he died on impact. He was pronounced when the ambulance got there. I did not know that about my brother until my reunion, or till just these last couple of weeks. So I called him and I go, did that really happen? He goes, Teresa, I don't ever share it because I feel like I could have done something, and I don't know what, but I feel like I could have done something. And I thought, he's been carrying that around since 1995 still. And not to discount, like, I'm just shocked that I didn't even know it. And it's this guy, interestingly enough, and I can share the story because I got permission from them to share it. Johnny, my friend that's now in a wheelchair that I graduated from high school with, it was his dad that was in that wreck. And only because Johnny and I are now working on Disabled But Not Really, or this next Impactor project, Johnny's been helping me putting the face on disabled veterans, disabled people in wheelchairs. He told me, he said, tell my brother, thank you for calling the ambulance that day. And I go, what are you talking about? Called my brother. My brother goes, oh my gosh, I thought his family probably must hate me.
Wow. Yeah, you never know what someone's been holding on to. And that's...
Oh, I know. Like, they're just like, ah!
Yeah. And it just goes to show that the reason your brother didn't talk about it is because he thought the opposite of what actually was.
Right.
Because he, just like I was holding on to that, thinking my brother didn't live when he actually did. And that's, it's our own interpretation of trauma.
Sure.
Dictates how we respond. And whether it's, there's plenty of people I'm sure thought most people didn't even know I was going through it, but people's interpretation of what you should or should not be feeling when you have trauma is usually the causation of our individual feeling of that we did the wrong thing or that we could have done more or whatever. It's that expectation that someone may have on us rather than the reality of what it was.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm curious, whenever you're mentoring people, do you have a couple of tips that I can share back even with my audience or my brother or whoever, a couple of things that says, hey, maybe talk about it, maybe call a friend. I don't know. I'm just curious.
I think it comes down to trust. And, I put a post today on Facebook about my circle. Mentor circles is very small for a specific reason. But I believe that I think mentorship is a huge component. If you truly are a mentor to a kid, where a kid looks to you, because I had a mentor when I was a kid, and he was a cop, and I got in some trouble, and he became my mentor as a result of me getting in trouble. But he stayed with me, and he never left he never let me down. And when you have that connectivity with a kid, and the kid knows that they can come to you with anything, and you're not going to judge them. You may give them stern advice. You may tell them you messed up, but they know that you're always going to listen and that you have their best interest at heart. That's how you get these things solved. It's when you feel like, my kids don't always come to me with everything. I'm sure there's someone else that's in their life that they can go to with certain things. And there's kids, the reason why parents bring me in as a mentor is because they know there's certain things that they're just not getting their kid's trust with. And they need someone else that can have another set of ears and eyes. And I think especially when there's been trauma, and obviously parents will cue me in on some historical components of these kids' lives, and my job is to get them to understand that whatever that is okay, and whatever they're feeling is okay. But this is how you deal with those emotions. This is how you deal with those feelings. This is how you constructively take that energy that's inside of you and use it in a positive way. Rather than allowing it to just continue to eat you from within. So for me, it's always about how do you take the negative, whatever it is, and turn it into something that you can utilize. So I help people because it makes me feel good.
Yes.
And I want to feel good all day long. So I will help as many people as I possibly can. And I tell kids it's a drug that you will never get in trouble for taking. Helping someone makes you feel good. And if it makes you feel good, do it as many times as you feel like doing it. And there's no limit, there's no quota, there's no cap. You can do it as many times as you want. And that's really what I think being a mentor is just giving kids advice that they can utilize to enhance their lives.
I love it. I do. I love it. Anytime I'm having a bad day, it's like, okay, get out of myself and go help. Get out of myself and go help. And the minute I do that, and literally my viewpoint opens up. So get out of myself and go help. So I appreciate that you do that. And I think like Johnny Pedroza is my friend who's now in a wheelchair. He coaches kids and he has authority with them, but they love him and they respect him.
And that just comes from your actions. That comes from, doing what you say and saying what you do. And I think that's where, a lot of my mentoring came from being a strength coach to kids. So that trust factor, when I get them performing the way that I said that they would be able to perform, then all of a sudden there's that, well, maybe I can tell them about this. And it just grows from that. And that's how it really just comes from trust is where it all starts from.
Wow.
Let's take the last 2 minutes and let's talk about the next Impactor. Let's talk about how important that is to you and why the support of the viewing public is important. Okay,
great. Oh, thank you for that. The next Impactor really is a contest that's going to show who the entrepreneur humanitarian is that's out to make an impact. And this final challenge for each individual finalist, which I am a finalist, is to see who can raise awareness and impact for a nonprofit. The nonprofit that I'm raising awareness for is disabled, but not really. And it was because a man was put in a wheelchair. He was in a gun-related accident and is now in a wheelchair. And he's created a program, a mental fitness nutrition program for people that no matter their circumstances, that there is hope. And I'm telling you, several weeks ago, maybe 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, I thought, I don't know this person. I don't know that much about disabled humans, really, besides my career in medical sales. And I worked in hospice care. It's not that I judge them, or it's just I didn't know. That is one lesson, valuable lesson that I will take away. So if you want to know more about it, helpteresawin.com. Teresa, no H, so help Teresa, Teresa win.com, tells all about the nonprofit, and it also tells why I want to be the next Impactors, because I believe it gives me a platform to continue conversations, conscious conversations, and conversations like what we're having tonight.
Well, I will put the link in the comments so that everybody has that. I appreciate your candor, your honesty, your ability to have a conversation, because it's not always the case when you're a host that sometimes conversations don't happen. Sometimes it's a one-sided conversation. But tonight was great. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of different topics covered. And I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, I appreciate you very, very, very much. And I always ask when I interview someone, and I know you're interviewing me, yet I always love to ask, what is something, Matt, that you would like for me to acknowledge you for after having this conversation?
That's a good question. My servant heart.
Very good. So Matt, I'd love to acknowledge you for your servant heart, and that you do things like this show. You continue to make a difference and mentor the youth. It makes a difference. It makes a difference for their future, and that you've been through something personally that you can be relatable. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
It's the first time that's ever happened in 53 shows. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Hang tight. I'm going to close out the show.
Okay, great.
Everybody, thank you again for 2 Dates in a Dash podcast. I am your host, Matt Cubbler. Thank you to Teresa Snider for being such an amazing guest and sharing her heart with everybody. Look in the comments on Facebook for the website, helpteresawin.com. That's Teresa with no H, Teresa, helpteresawin.com, to help her become the next Impactor, to help the nonprofit that she's working for, to help. And, just thank you again for your constant support of the show, and for the people that are appearing as guests on my show. And once again, always go out and be kind to one another. God bless.